Max Paxton, host of the PBS Emmy-nominated series Legacy List. Anyone know it? Is an expert. He's calling in now. Is an expert in maintaining a legacy. I thought that was Doug for a second. Is an expert on maintaining a legacy while downsizing and decluttering. He started decluttering homes after tragedy, when in 1 year, his father, stepfather, and both grandfathers all died, leaving him with several estates to settle at once. Ever since, Matt has been helping families downsize and declutter, and in his book, Keep the Memories, Lose the Stuff, he reveals secrets to preserving legacies for ourselves and Lador Vador between generations. Now, Judaism also offers wisdom. The Shulchan Aruch, that 16th century code of Jewish law, teaches, L'chol adam lechapes u'lepashpesh b'masav v'lashuv. L'chol adam lechapes u'lepashpesh b'masav v'lashuv. During the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, every person is to search and lipashpesh, to rummage into our life deeds and to return. Max Paxton's Guide to Preserving Legacies and the Shulchan Aruch's instruction to seek out and understand our life histories were very much on my mind during that Thanksgiving weekend in 2019, when I returned to Cape Cod for what would become my last in-person visit with Linda Kipnes, my mom. My dad, Ken, had died 3 months earlier. And at that moment, my brother Chuck and I were rummaging around, lip-posh-pesh, I suppose, in their safe deposit box. There was nothing of real value there to anyone but us. As I marveled over a few worthless but meaningful family documents, Chuck mentioned that Mom had a huge folder of documents in her assisted living home. I immediately felt drawn to lip-posh-pesh, to rummage around in her past. I soon discovered that as much as I knew about my mom, there was so much more to learn. I knew that my mom had been writing since she was a little girl. During her 81 years, she wrote poems and stories, letters to her grandchildren, narrative reflections, even a novel. She once told me she wrote for a variety of reasons: to hold on to memories, to guide others, and especially to work through her feelings. Whenever she became stressed, she would write. With an intense husband and 4 energetic kids, she just couldn't get bogged down by what was going on inside of her. She quickly discovered, as I would decades later, that writing might not alter the outcome of a situation, but when we were able to get the thoughts and feelings out of our heads, it significantly helps soothe the soul. Well, that weekend, my mom was struggling along after her second stroke, one from which she would never fully recover. And conversation was sometimes hard to come by, in part because of her debilitation, and in part because of my difficulty in moving beyond the sadness of it all. So we sat together, lip-posh-pesh, rummaging through a fat folder of Mom's precious memories, and we connected across time. As I read aloud her words, some written a half a century ago, the conversation seemed to flow more freely, and she filled me in on the background of people and places, the events and emotions behind each piece. We got lost in warm memories of the woman she had once been, the life she had created, and the rich legacy she was bequeathing to her babies and grandbabies. I found a published story about my grandfather's death so many years before, and wonderful rhyming poems she wrote for each of her decade birthdays. There were speeches she delivered as Women's American Ort's regional vice president, and planning documents for the Cape Cod Women's Expos that she organized to mentor young businesswomen. Mom's writings revealed the emotions and struggles of my 3 siblings and me when we were younger, and it captured the joys and the challenges of adulthood and parenthood, ours and hers. And I discovered a poem titled Invisible, written Thanksgiving week 1989, in which she described her ongoing sense of invisibility in the face of all that was happening around her. She wrote, "Why do I feel so far away, afraid to be the real me? I listened for joy, perhaps there's a way to bring it about, to be real for me. The children are grown, such pride in their being. My head says I did it, my heart says maybe. My business goes well, should it be better? How much is success, or just not for me? There's so much inside beyond what they see. Why do I hide there, protecting my me? Fragments and pieces I show to the world, but the inside, the core, the invisible me is protected and nurtures, but needs to be free. How do I get to completion as one, put all together, to be all of me?" Wow. To learn that my mother felt invisible, it was astounding. How could she feel invisible to herself and others? Well, mining for meaning in Mom's magnificent treasure trove, I discovered so many other precious gems, like a mid-1970s resume created when she worked to re-enter the workforce. From this resume, we learned that she was successful in ways she never really appreciated. Linda Kipnes was an outspoken, innovative organizational leader, a compelling community activist, a proud feminist, and a talented businesswoman. She was an adept delegator and a masterful motivator. Today, our family marvels at how she seemed to do it all, balancing her needs, our needs, and Dad's needs, and the need to repair the world. So I stayed up late that night, discovering and rediscovering the woman who, outside the limelight, accomplished so much. And then, with her consent, I took those files home. And in May 2020, I published a book of Mom's writings. She died 7 months later, but before she did, Mom was able to bequeath to her children, grandchildren, and closest friends a book of her values, a collection of her memories. This book, Invisible No More, an anthology of writings by Linda Gale Kipnes, became part of her legacy, teaching the values that meant so much to our mom and why the Jewish organizations and other organizations she nurtured had a claim on her time, heart, and donations. After my mom died, to continue her legacy, we set up a fund here at Congregation ORME in her memory and my dad's too, to further her values. And Michelle and I, after talking, decided to add Congregation ORME to our will, so that for generations to come, this innovative institution, ORME, can continue its important and inspiring work in her and in their memories. And thank you to Susie Gruber, the Dor Vador Legacy Society Chair, for teaching us how. Leaving a legacy is a person's way of expressing their values, our hopes and dreams, our vision for the future. We build our legacy through the words we write, the choices we make, the organizations we support, the causes we work for, and the objects we preserve. Like the mangled breastplate that dresses up our temple's Torah scroll, polished but imperfect, the breastplate was destined to the ash heap of history until, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. First, let me tell you about one Ernst Cohen, a young man who lived in Meppen, Germany, a small town in the north near the Dutch border. His family settled there almost 500 years ago, we think as a result of the Spanish Inquisition. Ernst Cohen was the youngest child of Jacob Cohen, the leader of Meppen's long-standing Jewish community, which boasted a beautiful synagogue and an active Jewish life. Until all that came to an end on November 9th, 1938, Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, when, at the order of the Nazis, the Meppen synagogue, along with hundreds of other synagogues and Jewish businesses, was burned to the ground. That's the memorial that remains today. The very next day, the local Nazis, in their sadistic style, assembled the Jews of Meppen at the site of their once holy space, commanding them to clean up their own filth and to deepen the degradation. The Nazis gathered local non-Jewish schoolchildren to watch, quote, the pigs in their trough. Ernst Cohen, just 28 years old at the time, was probably terrified, enraged, and emotionally drained as he began cleaning the ruins of his family's synagogue. Each shovelful of ashes reminded him of everything this community lost. Memories of baby namings and b'nai mitzvah, of weddings and other simchas, celebrations throughout the generations. Almost succumbing to the overwhelming sadness as Ernest Lippasch-Pecht rummaged through piles of now worthless but potentially meaningful ashes, he caught a glimpse of a shiny object, that mangled, melted choshen, a breastplate that once adorned the Meppen synagogue's Sefer Torah. In a moment of inspired courage, Ernst defied the Nazis. Reaching out his hand, he picked up the breastplate and hid it quickly in his pants. You might say that at that moment, he took his life, his past, and his future in his hands. Ernst hid and protected that remnant of a once glorious Jewish community. He kept it with him on an incomprehensible journey, including a soul-sucking stretch in Sachsenhausen, a Nazi slave labor camp, and then, upon liberation, into a 9-month sojourn in England, and then in the early 1940s, on to Boston, Massachusetts. Along the way, Ernst, now Ernest, married Josephine, and together they had a child, Olivia. In this act, they planted the seeds of renewal for a new life in a new land. The Meppen choshen, or breastplate, remained hidden away in the safe in their home in Newton, Massachusetts until 1984, when Olivia Cohen Cutler, their daughter, then in her early 30s, overheard her father talking to a stranger. She had no idea it existed until then. She was astounded. Now, they could have kept that legacy gift hidden away in that safe. They could have donated it to a museum to be put on display behind glass. Instead, Olivia convinced her parents that the choshen, the breastplate, belonged on a Torah. So they brought it to Temple Ahabai Shalom in Brookline, Massachusetts, their family's temple, where on Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day in 1985, it adorned the Czech Torah scroll, a scroll that had been buried during the Holocaust and subsequently rescued. Fast forward 8 years, Olivia and her husband Andy Cohen Cutler traversed the country and came to California, now becoming founding members of a new synagogue named, you got it, Congregation Or Ami. And in 1989, on Yom HaShoah, the Cohen Cutlers presented the choshen, that breastplate, to Or Ami, so that in contrast to the fires which destroyed her father's Meppen Jewish community, this breastplate would shine a light of my people, as Or Ami's name means, as they went about the sacred work of creating a new community. I remember my first bat mitzvah ceremony that I officiated at as a rabbi in June 1999, kvelling when Sally Cohen Cutler, their daughter, Ernest and Josephine's granddaughter, chanted Torah so beautifully. And as Olivia and Andy, leaders of our community, shed more tears as Donnie, Ernest's grandson, lovingly dressed this polished choshen on our synagogue's Sefer Torah. defying the desires of the Nazis to snuff out Judaism. Ernest's family flourished, living full Jewish lives, celebrating many a Shabbat with our Torah and the Choshen that their grandfather rescued. So inspired, Donnie and Sally went on to found Lomti, Or Ami's high school youth group, still the centerpiece of our flourishing youth program. Now wait, it gets better. Decades later, Donnie and his wife Abby and Ernest's 2 new great-grandchildren came back to Southern California and are now immersed in Or Ami, their childhood synagogue. And building upon their grandfather's commitment to preserve the Jewish path, Donnie is following in his parents' footsteps in leadership. This year, Donnie was elected to the Or Ami Board of Directors, and he's helping shine the light of Or Ami for his children, Ernest's grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and into a hopeful future. That breastplate story, that family's history is astounding. Where the Nazis wanted to destroy the Jewish story, Ernest decided to protect and preserve, Olivia decided to reveal and reclaim, and Donnie decided to refresh and renew. It's Rosh Hashanah, the day when we lipashpesh, rummage around in our past to write the next chapter in Sefer HaChaim, the book of our lives. We each have a legacy to leave, whether to children or students, to friends or family, to grandchildren, to people in need, or to the world. What legacy do you imagine leaving? Will you, like my mom, Linda, bequeath to your loved ones a metaphoric folder of meaningful memories and reflections and values? Will what's written in there include your contribution to the legacy of our Jewish people? Will you, like Ernest Cohen, be one who overcomes obstacles and inertia to preserve shining remnants of the Jewish past so that future generations can nurture a renewed commitment to Jewish life? Will you ensure the future of this synagogue by joining Michelle and me and Susie and Fred Gruber and so many others in Or Ami's L'Dor Vador Legacy Society by placing Or Ami in your will or trust, retirement account, or life insurance policy, and doing your part to ensure Judaism's vibrant future? Will you show up more often at synagogue, you, your friends, and family, and stand up at Jewish events and gather at social justice gatherings to help ensure the Jewish future and make sure our Jewish values help create a better world? Rosh Hashanah is calling us to lipashpesh, to rummage through our hearts and memories and lives, to reclaim and renew ourselves by retaining the best of our past and using it to create a Jewish future, a better future. So here's the ask. In the weeks to come, go lipashpesh. Go rummage around through your stuff and search through your souls. And then join me in lifting up our shared past to reinvigorate our shared future. And if you do, now that would really make it a Shana Tova Umituka, a sweet and joyous new year. My friends, L'Shana Tova Tikatevu. May you be written in the book of life for a good new year in a better world.